Hey, yes, hi.
Yeah. Hello, Jay. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Uh, how has your day been? Is it
Good.
good?
Uh, Pleasantly productive. Uh,
Yeah.
it's been a good day. Thank you for having me over,
Yeah.
and thanks to all the guys on this call, like using a perfectly serviceable Saturday evening listening. Akshay.
Yeah. Uh, so, uh, so basically, Jay, this is, I mean, we are CIA, which is Communities in Atria. So we are the student community of Atria Institute of Technology. We are the people who come after our engineering sessions are over, and we come here and we sit and do some great projects, something that can help solve real world problems. So that's why we are a student community of all like-minded people who are here to solve problems, and that is who we are. And what this session is that we are trying to get people from the industry to talk to us, to talk to the student community, and for the student community to understand how things work in the real world. How do they go about solving problems with the skill set that they already possess. So that is what we are trying to do here. So to all the people who are listening to us, I'll introduce Jay. So Jay Krishnan is a behavior change expert. Uh, he has started Applied Wonder, and that's a behavior change agency. So we'll get into what behavior change is, what behavior change agency is. And he has also designed several marketing campaigns which are globally acclaimed, and people know them. So we will be discussing today. So basically, Jay, I want to briefly cover 3 to 4 topics here. uh, I know I really want to get deep into how you think, how you design these behavior change interventions, but let's see if time permits, we can get into that. So the first thing that I want to know would be your entrepreneurial journey. What is applied creativity according to you, and where can students and coming from engineering start into non-technical, or those who have a creative inclination? So how do they start? So let us begin with the question is, how did you start? How did you know that you wanted to do start a behavior change agency?
Right. The thing is, I'll have to get pretty autobiographical on that. I'll have to go totally David Copperfield on you. It might take a long time.
Sure.
But just now that I understand what CIA is, just to give some context, the thing is, I guess whenever we do any course, whether it's engineering or design or marketing or whatever it is, you're always oriented to the how, which is, how do you become a better programmer? How do you do better marketing?
Hmm.
It's all about honing your skills, about building a competence, and that's what we're taught in pretty much any educational course.
Right.
And an entrepreneur's journey is about the why. So why do you want to become a better engineer? Why do you want to become an engineer? Why do you want to become a marketer or an artist? And
Right.
like Nietzsche said, if you find the why, you can always figure out the how. And normally the way this manifests, and we are not completely cognizant of it all the time, which is, when I was in college, I always had this lurking sense of boredom, the sense of like some sense of dissatisfaction. And I don't mean it in just, it's a bad college or the educationist thing, but fundamentally, if you notice, you're most completely present and doing your best, and your all your faculties come into the fore when you're doing something which you're completely interested in, something which inspires you, something which feels meaningful. And if fundamentally, if what work that you're doing, like it's the lion's share of your life, like when you introduce yourself, you always say, like you did, Jay Krishnan, he's the founder of so and so, this is what his work is and the credentials. And that adds so much, if you take that out, in a sense, in the nature of this capitalistic world, you kind of become anonymous. You're just like a name, a noun, somewhere suffixed on something. So it's so important that you choose to do something that's meaningful. And for me, throughout college, I did my bachelor's in mathematics, econometrics, and statistics.
Oh.
I Yeah. So actually, in theory, I'd have been a third-rate mathematician if I'd continued along the path that I was taking. But
Yeah.
fundamentally, I didn't feel completely satiated with the education system, and somehow it felt like, yeah, I'm doing all this. And even when I looked up to peers and others who were ahead of me, who had say got into an IIM or an IIT and so on, somehow it didn't grip me in some way. So if that's the end game, it still didn't feel like it would lead to the, the final end game, which is to be happy, to be productive, to do something meaningful. I mean, if you think about life itself, right? Like the heart is like the stopwatch. From that moment you're born, it's ticking backwards. Somehow we are never cognizant of that time. Like
Right.
your whole life is pretty much what you do till that stopwatch stops. That's all it is. And then what are you doing? Like, studying, doing something, but then for what? Why? So I kept, throughout my college years, I thought, okay, let me try to work this out backwards. So actually, the way I treated my college, I kind of felt I could pass like reasonably well. Most of our education systems, if you go through the last 10 years papers, like you see, like there are recurring patterns, and by guess and by God, you can pretty much clear.
True.
And I wasn't like, since I wasn't driven to like academically do brilliantly, get a GPA and study somewhere and things like that, I pretty much had 3 years to think really hard about why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I kind of worked backwards. Like in statistics, you have these things like in operations research. So you put all the variables which are constraints on one side and all the variables which are actually, pushing that thing forward beside it. So it's like this equation of things which are going up and things which are going down.
Hmm.
And so I thought, look, I can write, I can draw a little bit, I can think up ideas, I'm articulate, all of that, and that's on one side. And then the constraints are, like I come from a family that's like middle class at best. It's not like I haven't inherited much except the balding gene. Like that's pretty much. So if those are your constraints and you want to do something which is offbeat, then you really have to work with those. So I really tried to think, so what is fundamentally going to make me happy? And it's not a f of x equal to y. It's not like one thing.
Hmm.
You realize it's like an ecosystem. So you have to somehow cater to all those various factors if you want to give yourself a chance at happiness. I'm not even promising that the outcome will be happiness, because
Right.
there's also like a spiritual, a transcendent dimension to it.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I do not, mostly like this is the age of specialization. So if you become an engineer, you do that like completely through and through till you die. If you become a graphic designer, you just do that. A copywriter, you just do that. And that didn't augur well for me. I wanted to be an eloquent generalist. I felt like uh, one day you want to wake up and write, one day you want to wake up and draw. All of us have like this multi-pronged intelligence. That's what we are as human beings.
Hmm.
But this whole system just boxes you in. You're like nothing except that one premise. And you just dig deeper and deeper and deeper at the cost of all of those things, which actually gave so much dimension to your life and meaning. So, I wanted something which would be multifaceted.
Right.
Rather. Second thing was, all of us like some amount of leisure. Like the way the work is thing, you're pretty much awake for a few hours. You get like this small window in the evening, and
Yeah.
there's like, like they orchestrate you. You're like on this conveyor belt of time essentially.
Right.
And I wanted something very flexible where, if I want to like now like have this call and have a chat with you, like my business allows me. Maybe if I was in a job, I can't do this at this time. Like I don't know. So I wanted something which, I could have. And if you're to be creative, fundamentally, you need some fertile periods of leisure. And I say fertile periods because it's in your leisure that, you pick up sources, you read, you absorb, you marinate, your thoughts kind of, you winnow them. And,
Hmm.
so I think that's important. If you're like running all the time, you cannot be creative because your palette will be empty. You don't feel enough, you don't discover enough, you don't read enough. You can't paint with the empty palette. So that was the number two thing. Third
Right.
thing, I wanted to make my bread and butter, if not make like outrageous profits, uh,
Yeah.
like at least enough so that, I'm not like dependent on anybody or anything. Uh, the
Okay.
next thing was I wanted to do something of consequence in the world, in the
Right.
sense that, so a priori, one thing that I forgot to mention is on top of all this, I fundamentally knew that if I'm doing something creative, I'm much happier. So
Hmm.
vis-a-vis being a statistician, if I was doing something in the creative fields, that's where my juices flowed. So while I would make a half decent statistician, I would make a better, maybe an artist or a communication person or so on.
Right.
So the third thing was, what are you using your creativity for?
Yeah.
sell soap or you can do something of consequence in the world. So I certainly felt like if you're putting all your life's energies here, it would be great if I could do something that was useful in the world. So maybe it's like it's not purely altruism. I think it's enlightened selfishness. Like,
Hmm.
you know that this feels good, and it's like if you're really burning the midnight oil, if you're doing it to save a life vis-a-vis sell a bar of soap, it's a no contest.
Hmm.
So I thought I would like to, either entertain people or to do something which is socially relevant.
Right.
So leisure, multifaceted in the creative space, something that's socially consequential.
Hmm.
Uh, so pretty much all of that. And when I looked at the LHS, there was nothing on the RHS because I mean, I don't have anything against working or doing a job, or I don't have anything for entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
It was just that if you thought a priori that these were the factors you need to hit in order to have a happy life,
Right.
what kind of an environment will support that? And there was nothing that I saw. So I thought, okay, what the hell? Like, and you have 3 years, let me give it a shot. And you make your mistakes early. Like, what's the worst that'll happen? I lose 1 year,
Yeah.
which is perfectly fine because at least it gives me a window.
Hmm.
So at that time, then the other dilemma you have is, hey, should I become like a full-time artist or something? Because a lot of us have artistic inclinations, right?
Right.
And you think, why not I just go down that? And then I realized, for me, art is something so private. Uh, like, you don't want to make that your mainstream thing to make your bread and butter because it always comes with riders. So I wanted to find something which was like a niche between the two,
Hmm.
which is why instead of becoming a fine art person, I went into communication. So at that time, the first thing you do is try and intern in an advertising place or
Yeah.
something like that, look at
Yeah.
marketing. At that point in time, my sister was working in a brand consulting firm called Momentum.
Okay.
And I remember hanging around interning there. And obviously, intern means, you're doing desk research or buying coffee. Like, nobody really gives you anything productive. You're just like this fly on the wall, and everybody politely smiles at you. So I would pick up books from the library and look at the tapes that they had. In those days, the internet even wasn't like what it is now. Like, the
Right.
bandwidth would be so small, you would be on a dial up. So by the time a photo forms from here to here, like, you've lost the interest to see what that was. So I found this book called Organizing Genius. And the thing about this book was it was basically just 15 case studies, if I remember right. And each chapter was about, one really interesting group which came together synergistically to solve a problem in the real world. And it ranged from something like Walt Disney to the guys who created the F-136A, which is like the first stealth aircraft.
Hmm.
Then Oppenheimer, who cracked the nuclear bomb, which eventually led to Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Hmm.
So they were groups of different sizes. They were groups of different formats, but there was one thing common. They were meaning driven. They were small, like they were kindled by this common vision. And they were doing something which was so powerful in the world, like it changed things in a very significant way. So Apple was there, Walt Disney was there, all of it.
Hmm.
And when I looked at all the formats, I realized scale didn't enamor me. It doesn't, it doesn't matter. I rather make this one film, which is like this butterfly effect with the city out of a
Yeah.
base, the mom and pop kind of a format that had more allure for me. So then the moment, when I was in college itself, I took a crash course in animation because in those days, animation felt like a halfway house. It's a
Hmm.
bit art, but it's also a bit, like a profession. And I pretty much, it was a terrible course. Like it cost me some 20 grand in those days, and they called it a crash course. And I think they really meant it. It just like took off and collapsed in quite a dramatic fashion. When I came out, I was none the wiser. I was kind of furious actually,
Hmm.
because they claimed that you would be like this creator and all of it. When I got in there, it was like the sweatshop format, right? Where all the creatives happened somewhere, and you would be like this guy who made like a 3 second walk cycle. So in a film, you're sitting with your parents and say, "Oh, that scene." By then, it's gone. Like it's
Yeah.
already. So then, I was pretty disappointed. That was kind of, I thought, so this organizing genius kindled this idea that maybe I should do something of this format.
Hmm.
And if it's an entrepreneurial thing, well and good. If I was like a freelancer or this consultant, whatever, that's also perfectly fine.
Hmm.
As long as it gave me leisure, it gave me meaning, it gave me creative, that I could do creative stuff and I could do it in a diverse way, that's good.
Hmm.
And then I continued with my course. I thought, okay, what the hell? I'm destined to do my MBA, go down marketing. So I told my folks, I signed up for CAT and everything, but I had this real itch. I still hadn't found what I wanted to do.
Right.
So in some sense, your discontent is your friend. If you're like perfectly comfortable, you're satiated, that's good. That means you're good. if there's some lurking feeling that you want to do something more, that's really telling you something. It's like your wise friend. You just have to follow it into the dark. So at that time, like, first of all, I took a BSc. I had grades for engineering, so that was one notch down. And then I didn't have the greatest attendance, not the greatest GPA,
Right.
animation not working out, MBA not working out. But then, I know this is not like it. Like there's something more that I want to do. And I know it's in this area. So I stayed put. And then one fine day, one of my friends gave me this CD called The World's Greatest Animation. And I just put that CD in. There were like these little short films which masters were doing out of their basements. So till that moment, I believe like only large factories could do animation. It's so labor intensive. And each film just blew my mind. One made me laugh aloud, one moved me to tears, and it was just bizarre. How could, like, in 3 minutes, how can you change my mood, like, so rapidly and move me?
Right.
Uh, and then I had this epiphany. I thought, like, people think animation is just Mickey Mouse and like this carnival of entertainment. But fundamentally, it's a phenomenally versatile medium. It's like painting and poetry and everything coming together. Why don't I use it for social change? What if I used it to inspire people and to simplify things and all of it? It's a medium which has remarkable innocence and versatility. It's also creative hands-on. So, at that time, since most of the scripts that I wrote in my institute would get rejected, I set up a small company pretty much like randomly. It was called Rejected Inc. because they kept rejecting whatever I did. and
Yeah.
they were not very pleased with that. So they kicked me out actually. They gave me a D grade certificate. So that kind of fixed my career in animation once and for all. But I thought this was like a lovely medium and I would pursue that.
Right.
And, so I started going out and I thought, look, I would go around telling people I can make a film. Although at that point, like, honestly, I couldn't animate much beyond maybe a bouncing ball. So it was pretty audacious to think that you could actually pull off a film where people paid you for it. But I had like this small bunch of friends and everything. So I told them, look, anyway, we are like leaving this. Let's make one short film and who knows what will happen.
Yeah.
So I took 6 months. I kind of skipped my cat. I told my parents that, look, I'll make enough money, whatever my friends are making that year, I'll give it the next year. And then I made my first film called Broken Toys. So I pretty much, I would download. In those days, you didn't have download like these softwares to download from YouTube, etc. So you had to do all kinds of Joomla to get it in FLV, and then I would pause it frame by frame and study it. So I basically downloaded about 400, 500 films, and I studied the narrative process and the way it was going. And it kind of it really expanded my consciousness actually those 6 months. So actually even college, one thing that I did is instead of studying, I split the 3 years and I split it into the best authors I always wanted to read, never had the time. So I treated my BSc like the time where I'm Vela and I have that time. So the first year I read Gabriel Garcia Marquez, I read Sartre, I read
That.
Krishnamurti,
Okay.
Tagore. The next year, I moved to poets like Neruda. I moved to Rainer Maria Rilke. Third year, a little more philosophy. So it kind of really enabled my consciousness in some ways.
Right.
And at the end of those 6 months, I somehow came out this film, and I also took part in some kind of a contest in. Which I think SS Music was running. It was like the 5th anniversary, and they basically invited animation institutes to come up with a little ad for them. At that point, I just got kicked out of my institute. So I had to actually call the creative director and tell him, look, I'm not now in the institute. I just came out. You guys want a good film and we are really keen. So we were the only guys. He sent us a private invitation. And that way I called him from a coin booth. I remember like, friends standing outside and handing me coins while I'm trying to get from the help desk till the creative director. And then we actually won. And our institute, the institute which kicked me out, came third and we came second. So I took that money and then registered the company.
Okay.
And so the first year I really tried, first year when you start entrepreneurship, you're like all gung-ho, guys, we're going to make this film and, we'll win something and people will notice us.
Yeah.
And then reality hits you. Nobody's like out there willing to pay you money and all of
Right.
it. I
Right.
had a website and I distinctly remember this anecdote. So actually, there was a Dutch animation studio who were impressed by what they saw on our website. And they actually wrote into us with a potential project. And one of my friends was manning it. So those days, I didn't have internet even. This guy was very computer savvy. So 5 of us voted saying we'll put internet in this guy's house because he'll do justice by it. And he basically had got a virus in his system. And I won't get into the reasons why. I have my own theories why. And this guy had not replied to this Dutch studio. So we lost our potentially largest project
Hmm.
to our friends' computer viewing habits.
Right.
And at the end of 7 months, the whole team were like, "Kuch nahi ho raha hai, paisa nahi hai, project nahi hai, what do we do?" and all of it.
Hmm.
And then I had a rethink. So I thought, look, people, the thing is, if an ad agency is writing the script, then you're at the mercy of that agency. So they're not going to choose me. They'll choose like a larger studio, economies of scale, and all of it. And I
Hmm.
thought, look, I anyway enjoy making ideas. Why don't I go up one rung?
Okay.
So I said, let me make the campaign itself, then I'll get the film. So basically, I just thought I would go around and tell people that, look, I can write, I can come up with ideas. Would you be interested? And then I went to ad agencies and things like that. And I slowly got like my first project, which was with so I had this friend who worked in an ad agency. He wanted to, get the hell out of advertising and do something in the social space. And
Hmm.
I was lurking in the same time. So then we got together and we told, okay, let's try. We'll go out and bat.
Hmm.
Uh, that's the best thing to do. I one advice I have for anybody trying entrepreneurship, all of that. Uh, I don't believe in this thing of we'll go away to Pondicherry or to the Alps and then come up with this like burning insight which
Yeah.
will transform us and then drive us and all of it. Like I do believe you should keep your explorations very finite, very
Yeah.
measurable. Always there should be some tangible output. Like if you're goofing off for 6 months, make a film. Don't like just goof off and theorize about it and wait for weed to kick in with the stroke of inspiration and all of it.
Hmm.
Like be
Right.
productive.
Yeah.
So we gave ourselves 1 year and
Okay.
we went to social organizations. I created this film. And so he said, I come from advertising. This guy's coming from animation.
Hmm.
We'll do this thing for you. And we got a film actually from Greenpeace.
Okay.
And that time, I'm not trained in communication, nothing. So this guy was the communication person. And I just took a shot at writing the ads. And the moment I saw it, I felt like I can do this thing.
Hmm.
Somehow it's like this gut,
Yeah.
you trust yourself on it. So I just backed myself. I wrote the campaign. It did really well. And then I really started immersing myself into seeing the mechanics of creating communication.
Hmm.
And that led to the formation of my first like proper entrepreneurial enterprise. It was
Yeah.
called Center of Gravity. So it had me, this guy, and a couple of other friends who kind of fell out of rejected ink. So I
Hmm.
wound it down. So I was very agile in the sense I was not wedded to animation in that form. I
Hmm.
used that to move forward. I wasn't wedded to entrepreneurship in that form. It was fundamentally about doing something like with those 5 parameters.
Hmm.
And then Center of Gravity was a pure play communication agency. It
Hmm.
would work, so we decided only in the social space. So that was very clear. I did not feel any sense of, because since he came from advertising, we had easy access. We could easily do some internal communication, make a couple of lakhs, and just be at peace.
Hmm.
But it was just again something was missing.
Right.
Kind of took the rather stupidly courageous call of just going after social
Hmm.
and actually setting a communication firm completely untrained, like with just
Yeah.
this animation thing. And then I've been at it for the last 12 years. Oh, that's
Okay.
like what happened pretty much chronologically.
Right. So yeah. So very important thing that I could infer from this is it's not about lack of resources but lack of resourcefulness, that we
Mhm.
we tend to we tend to have everything but we don't see them, and that is one thing in your journey which I can actually learn from. And the other thing is the place I think where people go wrong mostly is that अरे हमारे पास motivation नहीं है, I don't know, I'm not motivated. So uh, the place where we go wrong is that we have mistaken the definition of motivation to ourselves, saying no, I don't know, right? I am not motivated. But what is motivation is that it is the result of you starting up and later figuring things out. But people that have mistaken that for starting, and that's just bullcrap thing for us to even think. Even initially when I started my podcasting, right? So where
Mhm.
I'm waiting for the right moment, right? That right thing to figure out what to do. And what is my motivation is after doing the fourth episode, I understood, okay, what my motivation for talking to people is. Later, I realized that, okay, when I talk to people, when I have these, meaningful conversations, I feel elevated. So the purpose there was, the process there was starting up and later deciding what motivates me. So it's that one thing which I wanted to share here, because that's what I understood out of your journey there. And talking about so what the kind of people that we have here are that people are storytellers. They love to address the crowd. There are people who are musicians. There are people who are into painting, who are into sketching. What is the term which is applied creativity that you mention about? What is applied creativity according to you?
Right. So, just to use, maybe I'll use like a metaphor from the world of maths and engineering. So, art is scalar, it's pure magnitude. You just do it. You write whether people are appreciating it or not, whatever. You alchemize your feelings and you paint, you write, you play music, you do whatever. So, it's got its own reward. And then when there's an external viewer, then there's like a secondary reward. You feel illuminated. It's not like you're doing it to maybe change somebody's mind, move somebody in some way. You just write it because you're overwhelmed with feelings and you want to put it out in some format, and there's a tremendous gratification to that. Now when
Right.
you're doing communication, the thing is you've got a very specific objective, so it's an applied science which
Right.
is got magnitude and direction. So you take the essence of what you would have done with your art, with your film and all of it, but then the end game is like maybe, you're say inspiring moms to wash hands with soap, that reduces diarrheal mortality. So you're
Mm.
saving lives. Little infants would have died due to diarrhea by using your communication to inspire them to, change their behaviors. So now that's like applied in some direction. In fact, that's why I chose this name, applied wonder.
Mm.
So for me, I feel like the prerequisite to creativity is wonder. And when I say wonder, I just don't mean like this wonderland phantasmagorical wonder.
Mm.
I mean like this, we all become, like Pink Floyd said, comfortably numb. Over,
Yeah.
you're not as inspired enough. You don't love as freely. You don't laugh. Like you get jaded, just like life sandpapers away that, like initially you're like all excited. After 3 4 years, like you're somewhat muted. Then you meet the same person after 15 years, they're like a apparition of what they were at that time.
Mm.
Like if you hang around at coffee table addas in canteens and things like that, the kind of things you'll hear vis-a-vis you sit at maybe, like a board meeting, there's a distinct difference in the sense of possibility. So I mean that wonder, which is like, you're capable of feeling, you're capable of looking at things with a fresh perspective, you're capable of being inspired. So
Right.
that is the scalar part. And when I took applied from applied sciences, which is, it's got, like I said, magnitude and direction. So that's why this thing of applied wonder. And I also think, like if you think of this as a device for finding some meaning in what you're doing in life,
Mm.
whenever you're struck by wonder, you will notice that your mind freezes. It's like this rapture of pleasure, right? It's almost like you forget the past, you forget the future, you forget yourself.
Mm.
And that's like a glimpse of something which is transcendental. And
Yeah.
that's what art and creativity can do for you. You see something so exquisite, you're just like riveted. And
Mm.
in that place, time stops. Like that's the only time you have like a pleasure which is not a function of what is happening in the world. It's just that, your consciousness is arrested. So when people say
Mm.
stay in the present, in my experience, that happens like at the epicenter of wonder.
Mm.
So, I just thought if you could create work like that, which, people are just going about their thing, and there's one little thing of where you're just plucking them out of their everydayness and just it kindles them in some way and it moves them to do something right in the world. How
Mm.
wonderful would that be? And that was the idea of applied wonder. And like that's pretty much a synonym for applied creativity, which
Right.
is use your creativity and it's got, like I said, magnitude and direction.
Yeah. So here, let's talk about what is behavior change and what a behavior change agency is.
Sure. So, in those initial years when I was doing marketing campaigns or, like designing brands for people, people came to me for surgical campaigns, like, say we are launching a product for the bottom of the pyramid. How do you launch that product? So in all those cases, you're making them like, it's like one specific action, right? You just make them pick up that product, or
Mm.
you're creating some kind of an emblem which they can relate with. So those are the two dimensions of communication. And in 2012, I got a very interesting brief. And again, this is possibly, again, it goes back to this thing of stay with what you're doing. Because I stayed with the thing, I hadn't discovered behavior change. Like I started center of gravity in 2005. This happened to me in 2012. But behavioral science is quite a nascent field, by the way.
Okay.
Uh, it's like what, like hardly 20, 25 years old if Daniel Kahneman hadn't postulated it. So it's a very new field, and I've been working at it from 2012. In that sense, it's like a relatively recent phenomenon. So what happened was this, which is a behavioral scientist, actually two behavioral scientists, an epidemiologist, a statistician, a psychologist. They came, and it's like a very rare bunch of people to come and give you a brief. It almost sounds like walk to a bar joke, but it was really like a very curious bunch of people. So they came to us with this assignment saying you need to design a communication campaign, and it's going to be deployed in the villages of Andhra Pradesh in Palamne. And so 7 control villages where we'll deploy this campaign, 7 villages where the campaign will not be deployed. And we need to change hand washing behavior. And hand washing behavior, because if you don't wash your hands with soap, it causes diarrhea, and millions of children die every year around.
This is the Superama campaign.
Yeah.
Okay, please go ahead. Yeah.
At that time for me, it was like any other advertising campaign. And eventually I learned the earth-shattering distinction between normal marketing and behavior change. So behavior change is fundamentally this: to sell soap to somebody is marketing, to make them wash their hands with soap is behavior change.
Beautiful. Yeah.
If you can change behavior, you can change the world. Like pretty much, doctors continue smoking though they know that it's bad. We drive fast, we drive slow after an accident instead of driving slow before the accident. So we have this retrospective fallacy. Like COVID, the only thing that we can do against COVID right now is wash our hands with soap, wear masks, and maintain social distance. All of three which lie in the realm of behavior. They're nothing biochemical, they're nothing mechanical, they're nothing systemic. So this is the power of behavior change. And then the thing is, so what creates behavior? So in this campaign, what they were trying to test, and this was their hypothesis, it wasn't even a hypothesis, it's based on cutting edge behavior science, but at that time, nobody had kind of manifested it in the real world. So they said, look, so why do we behave the way we do, and how do you get people to change maladaptive behaviors? So you can approach it through psychology, but my psychology varies from your psychology. If you go through it from a sociological lens, what happens in Afghanistan won't fly in South India. So then they said, let's go from an evolutionary lens. So what they did is they went back and they did a Charles Darwin on behavior. So right from the amoeba to us, they looked for evolutionary continuity and the source code of behavior. And they found that, like increasingly now, behavioral economics is telling that we are more irrational than rational. We are actually emotionally driven, but they never told us why. And these guys said, look, sorry.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, source code for behavior, tracing it back to the amoeba and understanding the behavior from there about why do we do what we do. So here in Superama campaign, where you designed this campaign, the communication campaign for asking the mothers to wash their hands and also for them to teach their kids to wash their hands, right? So here, so there is a psychological mismatch, right? People are having pleasure in having an unhealthy behavior that gives them some psychological reward, but they know that if they have a healthy behavior, but that doesn't give them that initial gratification, right? Instant gratification. So the psychological mismatch, how did you manage to come out of it for them?
Fundamentally, the thing is, even if it was gratifying hypothetically, maladaptive behaviors don't change by what we say. Like if you ask a mom, do you think hand washing is good, and do you think your child not even having diarrhea is good? Everybody agrees. You ask smokers, do you think smoking is bad? Yeah, it is bad, but they continue. So basically what we say is not what we do, and what we do is more important than what we say. And what we do is not manufactured by logic. Like doctors, like I said, who know that smoking is bad, continue smoking. So knowledge doesn't change behavior. All campaigns prior to that went around telling people, like, look, there are germs on your hand, you wash your hands with soap, this is good for you, all of that. So soap sales were going up, but behavior wasn't changing. That was the dilemma. So what these guys said is, I'll have to get a little more technical on that. Like, I'll just
Sure,
explain the.
sure.
So they basically said during evolution, our brain had three levels of mechanisms that developed. The first was the reflexive brain, and the reflexive brain is, it's like driving. Initially, when you're learning driving, you keep wondering, is it the second year, the fifth year? After that, it's like a conditioned reflex. You don't even think. So, for example, the reason you blink when a high beam hits your eye is it goes back to the amoeba flinching when the sunlight hit it in the brine of the cosmos. So the first time reflexes actually were invented, started in the unicellular organism. So it goes that deep rooted into your consciousness. So, there's one whole component of behavior which you perform completely subconsciously, and you can nudge that behavior. And there are many really beautiful examples of this in behavior change campaigns. Like, so in urinals, in men's urinals, the spillage used to be a lot. And that means cleaning is tougher, the system goes down better. So they just stuck a fly at the bottom of the urinal. And the thing is, there's a reflex to aim. So spillage reduced by 30-40%. This is one example of using the nudge, which is like, they don't know why they're aiming, but or one really beautiful example of this. They found that if somebody's watching you, you're more likely to be honest. So there was this office where, you would have seen this in the behavioral economics thing, where basically there was this office where you just had to take donuts from a particular stand, you'll put some money into a box and it's left to you. Then we found almost 70% of people were, they were just flicking the donuts, not putting the money in. So they tried writing posters, they sent out emails, they put all kinds of things. Finally, they just pasted a pair of eyes. And that immediately pushed up the number of people putting money. So just this, it goes back to, like, if somebody is watching you, you feel it. So
Right.
there's something about being watched that has this thing of, be careful, you're being watched. So vis-a-vis a CCTV camera, just a sticker of eyes might be a better preemptive deterrent, while a CCTV might give you post-crime footage. So you better make it really visible and make it look like a pair of eyes. So those are on the nudge motives. Or one famous case, so organ donations throughout Europe were at one level, right? And there were two countries, I forget which two, the organ donation thing was very low. And then they said, look, Europe, like, culturally is like very homogeneous. Why is it that just in two places in the whole of Europe, everybody's saying we won't donate our organs? Then they found basically in all the other countries, the default was, I agree. In these two countries, you had to tick. So the moment people got to the executive brain, abhi organ dene ka hai, nahi dene ka hai. So then all they did is they changed the forms, and it exactly went up by the same delta. It went up to about 70%. So it became uniform everywhere. So basically there, the insight is, if you think, that goes into the executive brain. If you're doing something obliviously, you would. And this is the thing that a lot of these fellows are exploiting now. So this is how you can weaponize behavior science. So, your credit card automatically getting debited because, they know that you won't take the trouble of going to the back, unclicking it, this, that. We go in default mode, least expenditure of energy. The more you think, the more your energy expends. So there's actually a biological incentive for you to goof off and sit in second gear. Like, the whole system is designed for you to have a least expenditure of energy. So that is the reflexive brain.
So the reflex brain, the automatic, reflex brain is the automatic brain, and the executive brain is you stop and reflect. That is the executive brain, and there is the motivated.
Brain is basically found that there are only 15 non-rational motives that drive all human behavior. And you literally, so they start from the invertebrates right to us mammals. So things like lust, things like curiosity, the play motive, status motive, justice is the only purely human motive, because, if you're at the top of the pyramid, if you don't treat, we don't treat each other appropriately, we'll self-predate. So nature invented justice so that we don't kill ourselves as a species. So it's, an incentive to be kind to each other or to be appropriate to each other. So basically their premise was behavior is manufactured in the motivated brain or in the reflexive brain. And then we post-rationalize. So the executive brain plans, like, you're motivated to go to the gym. Executive will figure out which is the closest gym. It'll keep the alarm. It'll buy the clothes. It'll But mostly campaigns till that point in time had gone to the executive saying, there are germs in your hand, there are mosquitoes in the air, smoking is bad. Everybody says, yes, we agree, but nobody's changing their behavior.
Right.
And these guys went, they actually studied this from evolutionary lens. They pinned it down to 15 motives, and they came back and they said, for the first time in human history, we'll use a communication campaign to show that it's we are emotionally driven, not rationally driven,
Hmm.
and that it's only these 15 motives. So in fact, my brief was not just increase hand washing, it was do not use the word germs, do not use the word diarrhea, which
Hmm.
is completely, if you think about a campaign on hand washing, on diarrhea,
Yeah.
if you cannot say sickness, you cannot say germs, you cannot say hand washing, you cannot say thing,
Right.
what are you going to say? So then we looked at these 15 motives, and we felt nurture was like the really most powerful motive, because we were targeting young moms because their children were the most vulnerable.
Hmm.
And the way the nurture motive works I mean, we see it in our own lives, but obviously, like in the animal world, it's purely this, that you give birth to an offspring, you look after the offspring so that it grows up and comes back and looks after you in your old age. So it sounds inherently very Darwinianly transactional, but
Hmm.
obviously, fundamentally, that's the operative mechanism of all of this. So then I created this thing called Superama, which
Hmm.
was it was simply the story of a child. You know how sometimes kids look at their people who are older than them, they kind of hero worship, like how did dad do that, or how is my mom doing that.
Hmm.
It was simply like a very simple village fable, right, of this child looking at the mom's activities through the day, and
Right.
she kind of teaches him all the little things, and eventually, hand washing is a part of the cluster of things she teaches him. She teaches him integrity, she
Hmm.
teaches him discipline, she teaches him hand washing, all of that. And by the way, one insight we had is hand washing does not lie in the area of good health; it lies in the area of good manners. So it more belongs in the cluster of
Okay.
dress well, say the truth, so that you're successful. When you're successful, your people want to see you well dressed. There are certain codes of success.
Hmm.
So if you grow up like looking like a ragamuffin, abusing, and you're like this corrupt guy, that's not
Hmm.
success for the mom in the nurture context. So actually, the whole campaign, if you went and told health, health, health,
Yeah.
it just wouldn't fly, because it was actually in the area of cut your nails, comb your hair.
Right, right. Yeah. So I went through the Superama campaign. So you had built this narrative of, there is a mom and there is Laddu Lingam. So that character about, and they have this contest of who prepares, a sweet laddu. So here there is Amma who washes her hand before, making the laddu. But this Laddu Lingam, he goes and he plays in the dirt, and he comes and he makes the laddu. But then he asks these, so this whole premise, I think it exactly looks like this movie, uh, Swades, where Shah Rukh Khan goes into this village and he talks to the villagers there. And what I saw there was it's almost the same. I could actually see that as a movie where this Laddu Lingam, he goes and he asks these students at a school, like it's a government school. They ask, okay, anyways, you don't wash your hands, so why should I while preparing this laddus? So that is when it hit me. That is when it hit me about actually totally empathizing with what the behavior which is going on with the kids. They don't care. They are innocent. They don't know stuff. But how do you relate to them and coming up with this whole story about making them realize and having this door to door campaign about going and telling them. So here when you said that uh, behavior change with respect to hand washing doesn't lie in the health sector, but it lies in the manner sector. I mean, that's that. I wouldn't be able to think of that. So, what are the other out of those 15 motives that you spoke about? Nurture was the motive with
The
which,
15 motive.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are those? So again, looking at from a psychological mismatch here, how did you crack the code? Is it that that the mothers care a lot about their children, so that and the children would mimic whatever they do? So the behavior intervention, the change intervention came in. What do you think would be the game changer? Mothers washing the hands, or kids telling them okay, mom, let's wash our hands. So where do you think the campaign went great?
So, I think the thing was, uh, like, like, just as how do you approach a problem like this, right? How do you
Mm.
arrive at that insight? So you look at the 15 motives, and we know that disgust is a very powerful motive for pretty
All
much
right.
hygiene related. So
Mm.
that is why that whole Laddu Lingam is basically the disgust motive. And disgust motive works very well with kids. Kids like to talk
All
about poop,
right, right.
all of that. So when you're talking to kids, you should go disgust. And if you're talking to a very universal population, you can use the disgust motive. Uh, for moms, nurture was obviously like the most prominent, because that they really care for their kids, and
Mm.
among all of it. So uh, I think there's also like this insight. Normally, we really let down, like as a society, we have failed our mothers. Like nobody, like if you look at a hierarchy of things that are respectable in the world, like mothers are just taken for granted. Like they don't have any power. They kind of unacknowledged. If you say you're a housewife, people almost look down on it. Now, everybody wants to be successful. Everybody wants to be like somebody in the world.
Mm.
So, in fact, I think it's a huge malaise. And I wanted to create a campaign. I'm talking to village moms, right? Normally, the campaign is like Kajol or somebody comes who's like the superstar educated woman and all of it.
Mm.
Uh, I felt like what mothers do generally is so bloody heroic. They don't need any further qualification. Who they are is already amazing. And if you're framing it from, if you want to thank mothers for what they do,
Mm.
like pretty much like our society has actually got incubated in the wombs of mothers, not in the ivory tower of capitalism. Like if you
Mm.
really wanted to like thank moms, you would frame it from a child's perspective, because the child is the most important person in the world for her. It's not the neighbor, or it's not the mother-in-law, or even the husband. So I
Mm.
think the thing of telling the whole story from the child's perspective, that was like the best thing that really cracked it. Because
Mm.
I would in villages, so we would go and we would put up like this projector, and it's like completely dark, right?
Mm.
And we tell them there's this film show. We don't tell them it's about hand washing, and there was nothing about hand washing. Like hand washing was just one sliver of it. And
Mm.
maybe you can share the link of the film later. And when
Sure.
you people in villages, like it
Yeah.
has to be a longish film. So this 10-minute film. So all these moms will come with their kids and huddle up. And
Mm.
then very slowly it would start. And for some time there would be a little like what's happening and why is this kid animation being shown.
Mm.
Very, very slowly you would see that suddenly moms who felt they were unacknowledged, invisible gardeners and all of it, that their child is watching, acknowledging even the littlest thing like cooking, washing, bathing. And with the child's perspective, there's a sense of wonder. Suddenly everything becomes mythologized. And then you would see moms just riveted. It's absolute silence, like these glowworms and just the light of the screen. And you can see that they're kind of frozen, they're transported. They felt like, nothing comes of all their efforts. They're nobodies, they're not thing. And then suddenly this thing is joining the dots between the simple actions they do now and where their children are going to end up. Kind
Mm.
of compresses time. It's almost like a hyper reality.
Mm.
That magic, that sense of wonder, that was the main thing. In fact, the whole film, if you ask me, it's just 3 seconds. Everything else is around it. So there
Mm.
were two frames at the end, right, where the son grows up, he becomes a doctor and all of it,
Mm.
and the mom has gone to visit the family in the city.
Mm.
And then he opens the door, and mom has come, and they look at each other.
Mm.
And for a moment, when he sees his mom, he has this flashback of all the pains that she's taken, and the mom and he, it's like
Right.
this. Both of them are having that flashback. So
Mm.
there are the usual scenes of him bathing him, giving him milk, all of that. And then there's a scene where the little boy is kind of embracing his mom, so he's just like little, like near her knee. And
Mm.
then there's a slow cross dissolve where now he's grown up and tall, and the
Mm.
mom is like small, and he's holding her. She's become old. That
Mm.
was the nurture motive in 2 frames. This touching thing of now she's the
Mm.
vulnerable one who needs the love,
Right.
and all of this has come down and translated into that one thing. So that insight, it's purely the genius of the framework. Immediately I knew disgust for kids, nurture for moms. This is the operative mechanism. And then as a creative person, you have to take a leap.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
took it from my own childhood. Like when I was a kid, I was kind of homeschooled till third. My mom would kind of place me on this ledge in the kitchen, and my siblings would be going to thing. And initially, she would start with a great frenzy, right?
Mm.
And I shouldn't like screw around, so she places me on a high place and gives me something. So I
Mm.
would watch her like sweating and huffing, puffing, getting the tiffin box ready and all of it. After some time, she would hit this rhythm. It's like the sea washing the shore or something. It's
Mm.
just very exquisite. I would like just sit and watch her. And there was something so calming about it. Like, she's got everything under control. And in fact, for many years, I think when I was 16, first time I went to the sea, I remember standing in front of the sea and suddenly I felt this sense of peace. And I couldn't understand what it was. And then it struck me, the rhythm of the sea and the rhythm of the way my mom moved in the kitchen. There was something familiar and thing,
Yeah,
kind of a peace, which it's something common. And so for me, it was like I could just dip into that and create this story. So it was very authentic.
right. So
Uh,
one more thing where I thought that it was amazing in the campaign part was that these students were asked to sing a anthem or a jingle maybe where they talk and they are praising their mom as Superama. And I could see the camera panning towards the mom and they have smile on their faces when their kids are, hailing them as such a great, maybe a god figure. So that is where it actually made me feel, and I had goosebumps the whole time I watched it. I read about the papers behind, understanding the motive about how this behavior complete change happened, and what were the results, that you got out of this campaign?
Right. So at baseline, it was about 3% of the people were washing their hands with soap.
Hmm.
And in the villages where we just did normal rational communication, meaning whatever was getting done, it just moved by 1.6%, so about 4.6 approximately.
Right.
The places where we did this campaign, it went up to 30%, 32%, and then plateaued at 28.
Hmm.
And the thing is, this is just a 2-hour intervention. You go to this village where nobody knows
Okay.
you. You
Yeah.
just do this program on a particular day. You drum up, people to come there. You get important people to think. I mean, there's a lot of mechanics behind the campaign design that is kind of beyond the scope of this. But
Right.
fundamentally, it was this. So 2 hours, you show them the film, and
Hmm.
then you go around doing something of reminders, rewards, all of that.
Hmm.
In just 2 hours, 1 year later, when you went back to that village, 32% of the people were washing their hands with soap. And which is just incredible, which means
Incredible. Yeah.
you can spend the whole year doing a program, going door to door in
Hmm.
just 2 hours. And eventually we brought it down to just 1 hour. And it still worked. So
Damn.
fundamentally, you get motivated. It's like escape velocity. Just do a phenomenal campaign which has a evolutionary motivational lever. You do it well and you put it to your target audience. You
Hmm.
can fundamentally change behavior like radically. And in fact, we repeated that experiment with the
Hmm.
other 7 villages, and it exactly went up to 29%. And when you're talking about health outcomes, normally, like if you get into double figures, you're
Hmm.
already really talking something important. Like if uh, 40% of the people hypothetically followed all COVID regulations and stayed at home, it
Hmm.
means that only 6 out of 10 people are walking about and potential vectors for the illness.
Hmm.
At 6 out of 10, you're already nearing herd immunity.
Hmm.
So potentially, if you could convert the world at that, or for example, we did something on toilet construction and usage.
Hmm.
So the delta was so huge. If they had used what we had done for Swachh Bharat,
Hmm.
they would have saved like pretty much about 40% of the cost and
Hmm.
achieved it with much higher thing. So that's the kind of like the I can't even like if I put it to numbers, it's just mind-boggling because
Hmm.
millions of children die every
Hmm.
year globally. So if
Right.
this campaign were deployed universally everywhere,
Yeah.
if 20% of the children that it was touching were getting saved, that's like a phenomenal number. Obviously, the math is a bit fuzzy there because it reduces diarrheal mortality by about 60%. So 30% of the universal set
Hmm.
were impacted by this campaign, then it's 60% of that 30%. But I'm saying the numbers are still radically powerful. So
So,
just
yeah,
yeah,
is that the most full? I mean, I would like to frame this question, which is, what is the most fulfilling part about your job?
actually, honestly, like 80-85% of my job is just luscious. Like it's the greatest blessing I've had in life. And it goes back to this thing of not giving up and searching for meaning because life is hard. A lot of things happen to you as an entrepreneur, even personally, like everything, like from illness to people dying, like your business going bust, all of that.
Hmm.
But because I love what I do so much and I feel it makes a difference in the world, it gives me the longevity because I feel like the pursuit of happiness in the world is it's very brittle.
Hmm.
What makes you happy today will be the source of your greatest sorrow tomorrow. Like it's just like alternating current. It's just going to fluctuate. You need to find something worth the suffering, something meaningful. So in my job, there are two, three things that give me satisfaction. One, as an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
because it's a unique piece. It's in the social, doing behavior change, using animation, giving me the leisure. Like it's my set of thing. Like it's all what I wanted to do in that way, and it's a unique piece.
Hmm.
Second thing is it's in the space of social, so it's a very powerful. Like I'm doing stuff on COVID for the Bangalore COVID war room. I'm
Hmm.
working with the London school. I'm working with the SID, as you know.
Yeah.
So pretty much like 95% of my thing are social causes. So it's very gratifying. And third thing, if you took out the entrepreneurship, you took out the social impact, just the joy you get in creating a character like Superama, which is like some echo of my mom. It's the echo of all the moms
Yeah.
around the world. Like the joy of just sitting and like line by line creating this character, watching it blink, come to life.
Hmm.
That's like a motivation, like a joy which has no, it's not extrinsically mediated.
Hmm.
It's an intrinsic motive. So yeah, I'm grateful. And those are like at three levels that I feel happy with what I'm doing.
Wonderful. I think so. I was reading about this pursuit of happiness. So basically, several philosophers have said that happiness is a fad that's not real, and so basically, where we mistaken is that joy versus happiness. So what we actually look for is the joy, not the happiness. There, happiness is this term that is so blown out of proportion, according to me, that we don't know what it actually means. And what it means is that, as you said, right, that moment of calm, that is your joy. It's not happiness. So basically, the joy there is that momentary sense of high which you get. And there are several researchers who have written that if you have joy over the course of many years, many days, you would be happy in the end. So the end game is that these individual moments of joy. You are joyous when you have ice cream. You are joyous when you sketch. Do you think about being happy when you sketch, Jay? I don't think that is a happiness there. It's that joy here.
But, I have a slightly adjacent point of view to that. Like, I feel like this thing of happiness and joy are semantic issues
Hmm.
in the sense that joy is momentary and happiness feels
Right.
like a cluster, like a, if you do a cluster diagram of your experiences, that's like this thing of more joy. So maybe you have had a happier life.
Yeah.
But I actually think of it differently. I feel like meaning is what one should pursue
Hmm.
because okay, actually, since I'm talking behavior science, I will illustrate my point with the behavioral science experiment.
I wanted
Behavioral,
that. Yes. Yes.
so basically, in behavioral economics, they did this thing. It was called the Lego Man experiment. So they had three groups of people. They would give them Lego pieces, right?
Hmm.
And each of these three groups, uh, they had to create little Lego men. And then you go to the desk, you give this Lego person to the guy, and each of the three groups, there was a slightly different thing. They were paid some money for some couple of whatever cents for each of those things. In the first group, what these fellows would do is they would just keep it on the table, put it away. In the second group, they will take the Lego man straight. The moment you build it and bring it to me, I'll give you your money, I'll break it and put it in a dustbin. And then that dustbin will go back to the back of the room, then it goes back to the people. In the
Hmm.
third one, they'll put it into a nice box and they'll keep it up on a shelf.
Hmm.
And basically, the group where they felt like it was going up on the shelf, it was something beautiful and useful. They required the least amount of money to continue doing what they did. The people whose Lego was constantly getting broken and thrown in the dustbin, they just gave up after a couple of rounds.
Right.
Now, so basically, what's happening is you're getting money, which is what we are paid for normally in the world. You're getting some happiness because you're crafting this and all of it. People are appreciating it. And then when it's put up, you get a certain kind of happiness. Now, just for a moment, imagine your whole life is that Lego man, right? And nature's sitting at the table. It's not like this guy. So you're 70 years, you're making this Lego man, and if nature is just breaking it and putting it in the dustbin, ash to ash, dust to dust, what is the meaning of all that you do? So you can only accrue meaning by, like what is that action you're performing in that finite time. So you cannot depend on just like, moments of joy. Like what will you seek out? Because one
Hmm.
moment,
Right.
like start
Yeah.
a company, it gives you joy. Tomorrow it goes bust, you're like
Yeah.
gone. Or you get into a relationship, you think like, okay, this is the greatest thing.
Hmm.
2 years down the line, somebody may have a change of heart and you're left like pretty much busted. So fundamentally, if you're doing something which you think is meaningful, and that meaning should come from, who you are. For me, I'm a creative person. I chose that thing, something in the thing. But there is enough evidence that, if you're doing something spiritual, you're doing something altruistic, that is like the highest pursuit to have. Below that is the status, which is, thing. Below that is experiences. Below that is competence. Below that is survival. It's pretty much like the Maslow's.
Yeah. Hierarchy of needs. Yeah.
So you pretty much, you have to slot where you're in that, be damn honest about it, and then really do something meaningful. If things go bad also, meaning will pull you through. If things go good also. And if you think about it from a psychological perspective, Viktor Frankl, the meaning
Yeah.
of this Jewish psychologist who came through the concentration camps, that was his only insight. I came through the concentration camps because I had a sense of meaning. I believed that I could write this book which would change people's lives, and that kept me alive. So if you're doing something which you just gives you joy, gratification, it's moment.
Right. Yeah. So, so one final question before we end this. What's your end game with respect to this meaning context in life? What is the meaning of life according to you? And what's your end game?
So, the way I look at it, there are actually human beings, no? We are not like just mammals and primates and bipeds and thing. We are actually amphibians. Like partly we are physical and here and we need food. We are wanting machines and we are experiencing machines. That's the operating system that we are born with. And then there's the psychological thing, which is like, all this fundamentally, no matter what I have, there's some lurking sense of, it's going to decay. Nothing in the world, like it goes back to your fundamental thing, everything's mortal. Like Miguel Unamuno said, if nothing is true that which is not eternal. So there is a meaning that has to be eternal, and there's a meaning that has to be mortal, because we have the physical body to look after and the physical mind to look after, and then there's that transcendent need. So I think, with if you look at my organization, if you look at it as a hierarchy of pursuits, in the center is meaning, around it is creativity. Creativity is it gives joy whether people appreciate it or not. So it's an independent pursuit of thing. Around that is for social, so it's you're doing something good in the world. Around that is it's an entrepreneurial thing, so you're actually making money and you're being successful. So I have tried to create an ecosystem that gives me meaning to my body, to my mind, that caters to all the four. Like I said, so the meaning is this, which is you do something that gives you joy by doing something good in the world through your skills, and which gives you a means of existence, which gives, in the eyes of people appreciate it. But it should be in that order: highest meaning, then the intrinsic meaning, then the executional meaning, then the reflective meaning. So that's pretty much, so the end game is right here, right now. Like if I die now, like this is it. Like what? Beyond that, it's, how much impact you make. You stay with it. And like now I've done it for 12 years. So like Suprema was in 2012. From there, I've done some 40 campaigns. So each of it gives its own joy.
So here, after looking at, so Simon Sinek has a golden circle rule where he talks about the communication of any company, why Apple is an amazing company and why other companies are not, uh, in competition with Apple. So what I can draw a parallel between the golden circle rule. So the golden circle rule has a why in the center, and in the outer circle it has how, and then it has what. So, and if I look at applied wonder, the meaning is that why. How you are doing is through your creative work, and what you are doing is that social change interventions, and that's quite amazing. And I really want to thank you, Jay. We have come to end of this session. I think we have, oh, it took exactly 1 hour from 6:10, I suppose. So this is thank you, Jay. Thank you for coming on this show. Really had great fun. We will open this room for any a quick Q&A for 5 minutes.
Just about to ask you that most.
Yeah. So so people, if you have any questions that you want to ask Jay, here's your time. You can ask it on the chat. I'll if you guys have any questions about anything with respect to behavior change or marketing or design, or you coming from a creative background, if you want to ask something, here's your time, you can ask him.
Yeah, I mean, they can just unmute and
Yeah,
ask us.
yeah. Even that is a better way, I suppose. Yeah.
Hey Jay, this is Surya here.
Hey, Surya, hi.
Wonderful man. I mean, kind of content which I got out of you and things which I got to learn out of you were really amazing. Thanks for that,
Thank
and
you.
thanks for being here. So I'm a 22-year-old guy right now. My question is, if you are a 22-year-old guy right now, let's say in this time, if you're a 22-year-old guy, what are the things that you would pursue, and what are the things that you would, how would you look at the world from a
Uh,
20, as you are 22-year-old now?
So, the thing is, the most authentic response I can give is by saying what I did when I was 22. Uh, because if not, it would be conjuncture. It's a little tough to, they say we have more in common with our peers than with our own younger versions. Uh, like, it's chalk and cheese. But fundamentally, like I said, when I was 18 itself, I had this discontent. I think most of us, when we are young, you want to do, where is your life going to? That's the question that you have. You're waiting for the relationship to happen, for the business to happen, for the success to happen, all of it. So it's really important to kind of articulate to yourself, like, what is going to give you this like life that you're envisioning. So at that time, this is what I did, which was, like, while I was doing all the normal other activities, I experimented enough. I figured out what were my constraints and what were the things that were most likely to give me joy. And I really pursued it with a lot of, in the face of all opposition, in the face of all thing, in a way that, within my economic constraints, within my, familial constraints, at least within few years, by the time I was 25, I would have done enough of goofy things and pursued enough things so that I have some answers. Don't wait for tomorrow. Like, just like whatever you think you would like to pursue, like, see if it's worth it. Think of it hard, put it down in a practical way, and try and pursue it very rapidly. And you can easily do it with your education, with all of that. That's one thing. You'll have to build in some discipline, keep a routine, try to allocate time, be courageous in pursuing that. If you do that in 2-3 years, you will certainly be better off than where you are now.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Yeah, so there is one question from Pradnya, Jay. So she is asking, did you realize about what you wanted to do over a period of time, or was there a moment which made you realize that you are ready to convince your parents, saying, yes, I know this is what I want to do and not the degree I'm pursuing?
So, instantaneously, I knew what I didn't want to do, which was a good thing. Like, that was, like I said, my discontent was kind of my teacher. So, like, this certainly was not what I wanted to do, but I wasn't very clear what I wanted to do, which is why, I tried to articulate conditions, which is like, I want to be creative, I want leisure, I want money, I want to do something good. So that I hadn't decided it'll be a company, it'll be behavior change, it'll be animation. Once I knew what I am made of, I'm made of these things. I need leisure, I need freedom, and you have to be very like nakedly honest about it. If you want like status and you want to be rich, all of that, you have to be damn clear, because no point bullshitting yourself. What drives you, you put those things in. And then I started experimenting. It took time. So once I knew that I want to do something creative, I want to do it in this format, I tried animation, then I went into communication, then I went into creating the thing, then I stumbled on behavior change. But I always stuck by what I thought were the parameters. So at least that has stayed put. If you look at the 5 things I told you that I was thinking of when I was 18, and if you look at Applied Wonder now, at least those ground rules haven't changed.
I think Jay has answered, Pradnya, your question. Are there any more questions? You can either unmute or you can have ask your question on the chat itself.
Hey Jay, my name is Sanchit and I had a question too.
Sure. Hey, Sanchit.
So even I thought of going into the creative field and I did an internship and all, but I'm not sure whether I'm creative enough to go into this field. So how do you measure creativity, or is it not measurable?
No, I do think, when you're going into a practical field, uh, like while there's no specific measure of creativity, outputs and impact are certainly measurable. And that's why it's an applied science. And sometimes you learn it over time, sometimes you discover it. So the only way you find it is by failing. In the sense, if your communication is working and you're able to do it rapidly, you're able to do it in response time. So what I would suggest is you put out your creative, whatever your outputs is, put it to a sanity check. Go into the real world, do things. If it's flying, that means you've got escape velocity. If it's not flying, then that's fine. Like, I mean, whatever it is that you're good at, and like, see, so there's never somebody who's like, unless you're a corpse, you're not like zero creativity. Like, everybody has their creativity, from moms who cook to like, people figure out their creativity. The only thing is how you want to apply it. If you want to apply it in the world where creativity is actually what is paying you, then you have got to justify it. So then, do as many internships. Like, I did that course, I created the film, I wrote a novella, I wrote a couple of campaigns. So I really torture tested, like, because it takes a hell of a lot to stand in front of a room of people and say, look, I've never made a film, but I think I can make a film. And if you can pay me like 2-3 lakhs for this, I'll be pretty happy and I'll come back. And yeah, that's pretty much the only way to know.
And I think one more question. I think one thing which I have found very common in the creative field. I have many friends who are into creative field, and they're like, we have this creative block. About I don't know what, or I just can't do things. And then there is Seth Godin, who is a great marketer, a godfather of marketing. He says that you never have this talk block, right? You don't get up one day and stop talking. You do. So do you, I mean, is it right to say that it is a creative block that I have? Or yeah, for that he asks, show me your bad work. When you say that you have a block, either you create a crappy content, but he says that that's a fad. The creative block is a fad. What are your thoughts on it?
At least, like, very practically speaking, I do think creative blocks are real, because for you to be creative and original, so many factors have to come into play. Something very simply, say you're going through a very disturbed emotional phase. Sometimes you just can't be present. You can do mechanical jobs. I can come, and if you ask me to write like an SEO article or something, I can just beat the hell out of it. Like, it's just prose. It's got methodology. But if it comes to the campaign, you've got to be like fully present. There should be some sense of vitality. You're trying to compose music, you're writing poetry, all of it. So in art, the creative block is real. Respect it. Creativity, I almost feel like it's a download. It just, it's like this: when you're driving in the car, right? You twist the knob and suddenly you get the right frequency, the music comes in. And then for a moment, they're like, I got it. It's a little bit like that. So in art, let it be. Let it take its time, let it come, all of it. The only thing you do is every day you show up. Because if you don't show up and the idea shows up, that's not going to happen. So you need the discipline to try to write every day. It's trashy, fine, put it away, no problem. So that creative block is real. When it comes to doing a job, when you're doing communication campaigns, you don't have that luxury. Like, it's the pandemic, you need to deliver a campaign, 30 people are waiting for a presentation next week, 3 briefs have already flown in, you get to work. So then, what you do is you do multiple things. Like, if you're writing one campaign, you write 7 campaigns. And over time, you will be amazed at how your neuroplasticity picks up. It becomes very agile. You'll think that Laddu Lingam is the final creative. If both of us sit together now and we do like a really intense brainstorming, we'll find 7 other campaigns. And initially when I started, I used to be like, I've cracked this one idea. Then you're so wedded to it, you feel it's so perfect. You feel you can't do anything more. Now I feel like, I'm almost like, it's almost like 2 ideas are coming in the way of each other. Like, more and more ideas are happening. So either you get rid of creative blocks by doing many, the quantity is a lot, and quality.
Production, yeah, the production brings perspective, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to produce.
I respect it.
Okay.
Just be authentic. Don't force yourself. Nothing. It should be just like a thing of passion. Never get hustled in art. Wait.
I think we are at the end of session. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Jay.
It's been so
I
much
think
fun.
we had great fun. I think everyone on this session would agree with me. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And we would love to have you here, next year, maybe, where you could tell us about all the campaigns that you would be doing meanwhile. So
Sure.
thank you. Thanks a lot. I
That'd be
really
great.
appreciate it.
And
Yeah.
I'm happy that there's a group like this and y'all are willing to hear other perspectives. I know that normally probably y'all will be doing more, sector specific, like about coding and things like that. And this must be like a bit of a tangent.
Hmm.
And I hope it's been at least obliquely useful. I kind of had fun looking back at my journey. I don't do that much.
Right.
Thanks to you guys, I did do that.
Yeah, I think I'll be constantly bugging you with calls since you are a mentor to me with respect to understanding marketing, understanding design. So thank you. Thanks a lot, Jay. Oh,
Before,
okay. One last question. Yeah. Divya, please go ahead.
Hey Jay, I had a question. So basically, my dad always told me that while trying to pursue anything that I was inclined to, anything creative, he always told me that there's a time to pursue something that's, passion inclined. And, there's always the question of putting food on the table. So it's better to focus on your current course right now, focus, get through with it, earn, become financially stable, independent, and then only will I have the luxury to pursue anything that I'm passionate about.
right.
And though he has a point, like you said, there's always that pinch inside that, this isn't what I want to do. So any advice?
Yeah. So my thing is never postpone or search for meaning, and never do it in a way that completely disrupts your world. People have this binary perception of either everything or nothing. That, abhi ek course chhod diya, jaake, we'll sit in the basements, come up with this great music album which will go viral, or make this film which will win an award. You see, this is like the pursuit of your life. You've got to be agile enough that with all your responsibilities, with all your obligations, that you also do enough exploratory forays in the direction of the thing that you would like to pursue, to see if it's real, if it's bankable, if it's, what is the format. Like, to talk from my own experience, so while I was doing my BSc, I also parallelly did this animation course. I also read up, I also made that film. Then when I came out, in the year that the cat thing was thing, I actually did some freelance. I made the money. I also banded everybody together. So you have to do both together and do it in a way that's manageable. Don't keep it as, completely watertight. I'll work hard till 30, I'll make some money. At least that for sure never flies. So you'll hit a midlife crisis. You will be kind of unhappy. You would have burnt your boats. You would have gone so deep down that road. It's like this. Say, actually, you want to go to Malleshwaram, but you don't know that you want to go there. But you end up going to Jayanagar. It's far tougher to come back from Jayanagar and then go to Malleshwaram. Like, basically, that's what happens. It's not a popular opinion, but I think that's the only way to do it. The practical way to do it is whatever you're passionate about, do it right now. Do it in a way that's practical. Do it in a way that's in symphony with your constraints, with your needs, with your people around. Take them with you and do it invisibly, but make sure you do it. Don't wait for tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. I think we'll have a hard stop here. Thank you. Thanks a lot once again, and looking forward to host such amazing sessions in the coming future.
Thank you so much. Okay, cheers, guys. Then I'll pop off.
Thank you. Bye-bye.